Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show. Today we're going to dive into the. Let me rephrase this. We're going to look through the world through a pair of rose-colored glasses. And I know you're probably saying, Dre, what are you talking about today? Well, imagine being a school teacher and being mentored from another school teacher, but you're looking at the world in a holographic type environment. Nobody can do no wrong. And then your teacher says you're looking at things through rose colored glasses. And you take that phrase and you begin to shape your life, and you begin to also shape lives of others. That's deep. Today on the show, we have a young lady. She's a school teacher. And I'm a little partial to school teachers because you guys know I used to be a school teacher as well, K through eighth, history and physical education. So I know how important it is to mold the minds of our young and upcoming youth. And those ages is real fragile. And one thing I did notice as a teacher was the lack of resources. That really troubled me. Well, several things, lack of resources and parents. Notice I say parents' involvement. And that's sad because we live in a world where, unfortunately, these are everyday situations when we're dealing with the education system. And let's not forget the underpaid teachers who put their lives on hold to make sure not only do their kids, their family be taken care of, but they want to look after your family. Without further ado, I want to welcome one of the greatest teachers of her time, the one, the only, Ashley Walls. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. What an intro. Wow.
Only deserving for a teacher. You got to do it
Yeah.
right for the teachers. Um,
Thank you.
Before we actually went on camera, your resume just spoke, let me put it out there, volumes as it relates to a teacher's service to the community. We hear a lot of them. A lot of teachers do it, don't get me wrong, but very few get notoriety for what they've done. Before we get started, tell the viewers a little bit about you before we get into this beautiful story.
Well, yes, I taught middle school math for 10 years in a variety of different schools. So, like you said, I have seen, the schools that have it all, the schools that have nothing.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then I became a stay-at-home mom, still had that education in me, read tons of books, decided I still wanted to be in the world of education in a different way. And I wanted to write children's books to inspire and empower kids. And so talked to my husband. We said, yeah, if you have this mission and this goal, we'll start the company ourselves. And that way we can keep the control of it. And so we started Mom and Bear Books. And now still a mom, still an educator, but also author and publisher.
That is phenomenal, especially how your husband and the family all came together to make sure your mission was heard. Let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about the lady that really inspired you. A teacher who told you look through things through rose glasses. What was that all about? How did that even come about? That fact so much so that you still live by that motto today.
It was interesting because I don't think she was meaning to inspire me. I think it was almost an insult, but I took it differently because it was a middle upper class school, but we had some areas where we had like the rougher kids, and I just adored those kids. They had so much personality, and they had the same potential that all the other kids in the classroom had. They just came from, their home life wasn't that cookie cutter home life. And so they were just a little bit rougher, a little bit more difficult sometimes. But when you got to know them and you taught them, they were absolutely wonderful. I still keep in contact with those kids, and that was at the beginning of my teaching career. And they have done amazing things. Some of them have started their own business, and So when she told me you will see the world through rose-colored glasses, that'll fade, it'll come off, and you'll see these kids for who they really are. And that really hit me because I said, no, I do see them for who they are, and I will keep these rose-colored glasses on, and I will see the good in everybody because when you see the good in them, the good shines through. So yeah, that was that so long ago.
It makes you wonder, and I agree wholeheartedly with what you said because I remember my first day teaching. I went home and I laid on the couch and I passed out. My first day, kindergarten through eighth. So just imagine
Uh-huh.
come out. I literally went on the couch and was like the next day I said, oh my God, I got to go back to this school again. I
Yeah.
realized one thing. It took me back for a minute. I said, wow, I need to call every teacher from kindergarten through eighth grade if they're still with us and say, hey, I'm sorry because I knew how bad I was at that age. But to
Yeah.
go back to what you were saying, a shocking revelation hit me as I as my months into the school system and the years happened. And I remember some of the teachers said exactly that to me. Like, why are you worried about them? They would never amount to
Hmm.
anything. And it hurt me like really deep down inside because I'm like,
Yeah.
the first thing out of my mouth was, then why in the hell are you here?
Right.
That's exactly what I said. Why in the hell are you here? I heard more negative feedback from teachers that really shocked me, but I saw a handful that really went out of their way to make sure that service was done under the name of education.
Yeah.
What was your childhood like? Because you seem to say you've always gravitated to seeing the good in people. What was your childhood like?
I had a wonderful childhood. I have a sister and a brother and two parents. They both worked for the most part. My mom did become a stay-at-home mom when I was about in middle school. But they really are just really positive people and had a positive impact. My grandpa had a really positive impact. He was successful in business, but always had that heart to go and help the underserved or the people who just needed a little bit extra help. And so through that, I did a lot of volunteering when I was in high school and college. So I saw, people or kids who grew up differently than I did, from a younger age. And I just kind of always had that heart to help them because, I didn't choose to be born into the family I was born in. And I could very easily have been, born into a different family and not had all the resources. But they're still deserving. They're still smart. They still have potential. Um, and so, yeah, we've just kind of always had that heart to help others.
When did the when she said what she said and it took hold of you and you probably like you said you took it as an insult. How did you change it? How did you wind up changing the narrative?
I just, yeah, it was interesting because I think she meant it as an insult, but I took it as a compliment. I took it as like, wow, thank you. I didn't know I saw the world through rose-colored glasses. I just thought I saw these kids for who they were. And so it just kind of stuck with me to make sure that I always kept them on. And life has its ups and downs and it gets hard. You have kids and you're tired and all the things happen. And that's just one thing that you always come back to is like, hey, let's see the world, let's see a situation in a positive light. Let's change our mindset. And if we see things with a positive mindset and an abundance mindset, then you can really, it changes the whole situation.
But that's easier said than done. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but in reality, as we know, we still dealing with environmental factors in when it comes to dealing with kids. We don't know their emotional state when they go home. Most kids are
Hmm.
a one resource home structure, a school system that is under budget depending on what location you're in. And sometimes this has to do with, like you said, the have and the have nots.
Hmm.
It's not saying that these kids don't have the potential, but a lot of times if they don't have the role models in the environmental factors, this becomes a challenge all within itself. So with those challenges being placed upon you, especially like let me go back for one more second. The school system that you taught in, what was the culture ratio that you were dealing with?
What was the what?
Culture ratio, was it like more African Americans, more Caucasians? Because that also plays a key factor in the learning structure as well.
I've taught in different schools. So that was a predominantly Caucasian school, middle, upper class school, with kind of a section of like the lower income area that went into the school, but it was yeah, predominantly Caucasian. And then I've also taught in a school in Houston that was opposite. It
Mm.
was like almost 50-50 Hispanic, African American, like a half a percent. I had one Caucasian student in my 3 years I was there.
How did you, before, I'm pretty sure the experience from all three of these led you to where you at today. So go back to what you just said. What data did you take from each one of those environmental situations?
It's a lot like what you said. I having the experience in those two very different schools, the resources were very different. Night and day, from the resources one school had versus the other. Like you had mentioned earlier, parent involvement and different things like that. But one thing that wasn't different was the potential that kids had. The kids in both schools equally as smart, equally as capable. And when you dug down and got to know them, they had the drive and they wanted to succeed and they wanted to have a bright future at both schools, no matter what. So, really, what I saw was just the lack of resources. The I hate to say like quality of teacher, but it was hard to keep teachers at certain schools, year after year. So at the first school I taught at, there were teachers that were been there for 10 to 20 years. At the other one, teachers would leave halfway through. So that was a really difficult thing, and you have to overcome it. And there's not like one easy answer for it. It's so many different factors, but that really motivated us and me to see these kids have all the potential and the skills and the ability. They just need some help.
Why? I know this is hypothetic, but you're a teacher. Let's get real. Why do you
Hmm.
think that the longevity for some teachers were different versus the other teachers?
In the same school
Yeah,
or that.
within all the schools in general, because I've seen it. I mean, I remember not wanting to come back. Well, I was commuting from Indianapolis to Cincinnati, which is almost a 2 hour drive there and 2 hours back. But when the principal was like, "Hey, these kids really like and I began to ask myself, wow, did I really make a difference? And that kind of changed my objective. I didn't have a problem, but I think the problem, what I did appreciate more than anything was like you said, those kids was like, well, Mr. Andre, you drive. They didn't know how to say Indianapolis. You drive all the way from Indiana to here. Why? And to share with them, because I want to see you guys succeed. Their whole demeanor began to change.
Hmm.
Because I was like, do you guys know how far that is for me to drive? And when I showed it to them, their whole mindset changed because they
Yeah.
wasn't used to somebody really going out of their way to
Hmm.
invest in them. So back to the question in general, you mentioned here's a 20 years of teaching, and here's people just going in and out of the door in the different school structures. Why do you think that is from a teacher standpoint?
Well, I think for those two schools, it's different. At the first school I worked at, it was easier. If a kid was out of line, you call the parent, and for the most part, the parents would handle it. It was an easier environment to work at.
Mhm.
You still had teachers who just didn't last very long because teaching's very difficult. It's exhausting. For the other school, it was a very difficult place to walk into. You didn't have necessarily as much parent support, or you couldn't get a hold of a parent, or there weren't parents around. And it was just a really difficult place. I mean, I had told my principal too, because he was a little bit questioning on like hiring me. And I said, look, you have teachers walking out the door midway through the year. I will at least stick it out through the whole year. If I can't hack it, you at least have me till the end of the year. Like that's more than you can say for other teachers, but I really want a chance. I feel like I can make a difference in their lives. So I saw, it was tough. The beginning, the kids were not the nicest to me. But once they saw that I was there and I cared about them and they started to have success, and I showed up, day after day, and I believed in them and I built relationships and got to know them, then they completely changed and they would act a different way in my classroom than another classroom, but it's tough and they have to know, you have to truly care about those kids. And the parent and the teachers that did, and the teachers that had those relationships, even in the difficult schools, they did stay. I say that some teachers were out the door halfway through even a semester, but there were teachers there that had been there for a long time, and they built these solid relationships with these kids. And so I think it's about building the relationships and wanting to be there. Not every career is for every person, and people don't know that until they go give it a try. But you really got to have a heart for the kids.
I agree with that 100%. Let's talk about the difficult challenges. We know when you have resources, it's a different approach to education and building the um, the confidence and the ability, because I already pretty much got the confidence. So let's go with the people that don't have the confidence, that don't have the resources. How do you get those how do you get the hopeless hope? And how did you go about doing that?
There's a lot. I start by letting them experience success. A lot of the kids, I taught middle school math, so I started in sixth grade with my kids, and they were on second and third grade level. So I had to meet them where they were at and teach them in a way where they could understand. And once they started building that confidence, ask them questions about who they are, and they start to get to know you. And then you start showing them potentials. Hey, here's a career you could have. Here's a school you could go to. Here, a lot of them hadn't left their neighborhood and they didn't know the world around them. So when they start to see the world around them and see that it's a possibility for them, and they start learning and growing and experiencing success, their confidence naturally builds. Um, but they have to be met where they're at and build their own confidence. And then, so I taught the same kids for 3 years. I followed them all the way to eighth grade. By seventh and eighth grade, my kids were like, no, no, don't tell me. I got it. I'll figure it out. They had built so much confidence in themselves and their abilities that they wanted to figure things out for themselves. And they would say, when I go to college, when I do this, when I do that, instead of like, oh, it's not even an option for me. So you just got to build that confidence and that relationship. And the resources, you may not have as many resources, but you don't necessarily need them if you've got buy-in from the kids.
What about the principal that saw the high turnover? How did you convince him? Matter of fact, what was his we know what his opinion was at first, which I think is crazy. If you see a high turnover in your staff, and it makes me wonder, did you as a principal even believe in you being the principal, trying to build a team and trying to build the vision, because it really starts with the principal. So what was his demeanor like before you went off on your own? What was his demeanor like when you brought this concept to him? And did he even see the change happening?
He was great. He was awesome. He was brought into that school to change it. The school was in there was a possibility of it getting shut down. It wasn't meeting standards. So he was brought in to kind of revamp and turn the school around. And he did a great job. He brought in, he kind of cultivated those teachers that had been there for a long time, brought in new teachers. But it was still, just the environment. Some teachers, they just couldn't do it. But he, when I told him, like, I think I can do this, I wanted a chance, he was like, okay, he was very supportive. And then, by the end of the year, I said, I want to keep going. We've built something great with these kids. I want to go to seventh grade. And he was like, yeah, their test scores have come up, go to seventh grade. So he was a wonderful principal. He really built a positive culture in that he got to know the students. The students, liked talking to him too. So he really was part of that, like getting to know the students, building the culture.
When did you decide to exit the teaching occupation, and why?
That same group of kids I followed to eighth grade, then they were going off to high school, and that was a turning point. I said, do I keep following them because I was so attached to them? And I was like, I can follow them to high school and I can keep them for 4 more years. But I kind of really had a calling to move to California. It's kind of funny. I was like, God sent me to California to meet my husband. So I kind of decided at that point I'm gonna move to California, and I taught a little bit there, but those kids that I taught at that school for 3 years, they just had my heart, and I like the school was never the same. So I taught a little bit in California, but then when I started having kids, I decided to be a stay-at-home mom. And then when we started the publishing company, I said, okay, now I can go back and kind of really work with the kind of kids that I want to through the books and stories.
So explain a little bit about that journey. You said, I know you're an author. You write children books, but how did you manage to switch the narrative? I mean, don't get me wrong. We all do changes in our life. I've done it, but did you have the experience to do all this prior to leaving the teaching field?
No, I mean, I taught math. I didn't even teach English. I just it was a calling, you know. I'm an avid reader, so I love to read. I read tons of books, just thousands of books to my kids, and I kept getting a story ideas and story ideas. Sat in the back of my mind for years, and then one Sunday I came home from like a little day date with my daughter, and I talked to my husband. I was like, I really feel called to write a book. And he was like, okay. And I kind of explained it to him. And he said, well, we're going to start a publishing company. We'll publish it ourselves. We'll bring on other authors. And I said, okay. And Sunday afternoon, we decided to start a publishing company and we just researched. We researched, we learned, we made contacts. It's mainly, you know, he still has his full-time job, so he does it part-time. So it's my company. And I learned, I still learn. Um, but yeah, we bought mamabearbooks.com and never looked back.
So who came up with the name Mama Bear Books and what's Mama's Bear's Books mission? I mean, it's easy to start a company, but at the end, you are service oriented. Your husband is service oriented. What's the mission with Mama Bear Books?
So the mission with Mama Bear Books, it you know, it's evolving. It's evolved a lot over the last couple of years. The first part was like, let's write fun books to get kids to read. Because reading, you know, that's one thing I did see too in those lower schools is kids couldn't read. And if you don't read, that's really a shot to your confidence. So we really wanted to write fun books that parents enjoyed and kids enjoyed to get kids to be like, one more book, one more book, one more book. So that's kind of how we started out our mission. And it's really grown to being like, let's get books in hands of kids. You know, obviously we need to sell books and we want to sell books across the country and really become a leading publisher. But we also really want to get books into the hands of kids who don't necessarily have the opportunity to have books. So many kids don't have books at home, and you have to have books at home. It
Mhm.
sets up that foundation for reading and learning. So really our mission is to grow our company so that we can have the opportunities to provide books for kids who don't have them
Well,
and really just spread literacy.
you've already started that mission. You teamed up with is it the Nancy Reagan Bush found what is tell me about that. How did that even come about?
Oh, they're such an amazing organization. A really philanthropic family contacted us because they liked the books and they do a big donation every year and they said we would like to donate, you know, some of your books to the Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation. So we'd have kind of a three-way partnership with them, and were able to get over 49,000 books to the Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation, which will be spread all across Houston to
Wow.
kids who don't have books in the home. I'm actually able to do the Houston Reads Day in a few months, where I get to go into the schools and read my books to the kids and sign them and all that kind of stuff. So it's really grown into an awesome partnership.
What was your first book that you wrote and what inspired the first book?
So the first book that we published, because I was writing and writing and writing and writing, but the series that really kind of came to life was about these four kids who have huge imaginations and their toys kind of come to life for the day. And they're the ones who get to make their own decisions and work together and show kindness and friendship. So the first one is the day I had a bulldozer and like they have construction vehicles for a day. And then the next one in the series is the day I had a dinosaur. And then the day I had a fire truck comes out in March. So it's just, you know, their toys come to life and they're the heroes.
Let me go here with this. You're doing a great project around the Houston. You said Houston, right? Houston, Texas.
Yes. Uh-huh.
You mentioned California. So where are you in California or are you in Houston, Texas?
We're all over. No, I'm from Texas, but we were in California for a while and then moved back to be closer to family. So we are in Austin, Texas.
Okay, now it makes sense. Okay, just want to clarify that for the viewers.
Yeah, I know.
So with that said, you're doing a lot of things in the Texas area, but you are tied with a major distribution of is it the Bush? Did I get it right? The Bush, is that right?
Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation.
Yeah, is that global? Like, will your stuff be able to touch all the 50 states and the areas where people don't have resources? I mean, or is it just centralized where you at? Your particular project.
Yeah, so I mean, our books are available across the country. We have a book distributor that we work with because we are a proper publisher. So our books are nationwide. This is a project that is based in Houston right now through their foundation.
Mhm.
But we would love to be able to help kids, as many kids as we possibly can. And the more our business grows, then the more kids will be able to help.
You mentioned now you did the pivot. So you did an audible at the line of scrimmage, and now you're into now you're into writing. How do you bring your first love, which is math, into these stories?
I know, that's interesting. I mean, I love math. I'm kind of a little math nerd, but I also love reading and really education and educating and empowering kids is my love. And math just happened to be what I was good at, so that's what I taught. And a lot of kids don't like math, so it kind of went in with that. I'm going to make you like math, but really, it's my love for empowering students and kids to be the best that they can be, and that's what I try to put in my writing.
But do you put any mathematical problems in there? I don't. You got to leave some type of clues in your
I
book. Do you put any
know.
mathematical problems in there as they're reading?
No, not in these. And when I was writing a whole bunch of rough drafts, I do have some that were kind of like a little math adventure, but maybe one day we'll have a math one in there.
You spent many years looking through rose color lenses, eyeglasses.
Hmm.
What has the world? What have you seen? Tell the viewers what you've seen so far.
I've seen wonderful things. The rose-colored glasses, it's something that's transitioned to the company because we're small and we are new and we go up against the big publishers, but I see us like a big publisher, just like I saw my quote unquote troubled kids as future presidents. Like I saw the big picture for them and I see the big picture for our company. We'll be in Target, we'll be in Walmart, we'll be national, international. So those rose-colored glasses let me see the world in a positive light for people and for anybody. Oh, they have this against them. Yeah, but they could be doing this instead. Or we have this road in front of us. It's so difficult. Yeah, but we can get there. It just gives that positive light that you can do anything.
What do what do we need to do as adults, as parents, to make sure that our kids do not have to struggle anymore?
Oh, that's a big question. I mean, like you could say academically, read. Reading is a foundation for everything, and it increases their imagination, creativity, their critical thinking, especially now in a world where everybody wants to tell you what to think, and there's influencers everywhere you turn. Kids really need to be able to think for themselves, and reading is one of the best ways that they can do that. And so, read, 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 and then teach them to have a positive mindset. For example, we had a snow day in Texas and everything shut down for half an inch of snow. But then the next day, the kids were like, there's hardly any snow left. And I said, how about we say, wow, look at all the snow that's left. And that completely changed their attitude when they went in the backyard. They were like, yeah, look at the snow. And so it turned it from like, oh, it's ending to we still get to have some. And so if you can just change that mindset, which we talked about is a difficult thing to do, I like to read a lot of kind of empowering books. I'm reading the book Grit, and I'm reading the Power of One More. And so if you're constantly filling your mind with a positive mindset, that's going to bleed over into your life. But it has to be done, almost on a daily basis.
You are now a mother. What do you bring to your table now as a former teacher, as now an author, as now a wife? What's different with other teaching other kids now versus being your own, being a mother?
Well, my kids don't want to hear what I have to say. I try to teach my daughter math now, and she's like, "No, mommy, this is how you do it." I'm like, "Avery, I have two math degrees. Like, this is what do you mean? Listen to me." But it's been really, I mean, in particular, like the starting the company, they are like, "You should write a book like this," or we take him to markets, we do some book festivals and stuff. And my son, he's 4.5, and he'll be out there. You should check out this book. Would you like to come look at our books? This book is really funny. So it's turned them into like little salespeople. So it's more like they're learning as they watch versus what I'm telling them.
Yeah.
So that's been a really cool thing for them to grow and learn through watching us.
Now you just said something that I thought was really key. I'm listening to everything you said. You have 2 degrees in math.
Mhm.
Here it is. You're trying to tell your daughter a problem. And this is a question to you. She says, "No, mommy, this is how I was taught to do this."
hmm
The different styles of math, and math is universal. How do you She brought to you a situation that one teacher taught her,
hmm
skill set. And the only reason why I'm asking, because I had this happen to me when I went back to college for my master's and I had to take a math class. And I didn't understand how to do the problem. I remember she called me to the board. Never will forget this shit to save my life. She called me to the board to do this problem. And I got the problem right. And she says, "Andre, could you explain to the class how you got the problem right?" I said, "I have no idea." But I just remember watching what you did, but that wasn't the
Mhm.
way in which I was taught how to do the problem. So I just kept doing it the way that I saw it until I couldn't do it anymore. And that's pretty much how it was. So back to the question with your daughter, being a math teacher with 2 degrees, how do you address something like that? Because there's 2 different styles of teaching, but you getting ready to tell your daughter, this is how I did it. How do you do that?
Yeah, well, it was more like she was doing single digit addition, and so she was wanting to do it, horizontal, and but then she wanted to do harder stuff, 2 and 3 digit math, and I was like, okay, we need to start writing that vertical because you're gonna have to, carry over, and she just couldn't get that it had to be written this other way, and I'm like, no, you can write it another way. It's gonna be easier if you write it this way. But I am a firm believer in like there's not one way to do things, and especially with math, like there might be an easier way or a quote unquote correct way.
Right.
But if a kid can think outside the box and figure it out another way and it makes sense, like go for it. My daughter even said something interesting the other day and her teacher's absolutely wonderful. I adore her, but she said, "Well, she just tells me what to do and I want to figure it out on my own." And I think it's really important for kids to be able to figure things out on their own, and we're there to guide and help them, but they don't always have to do it exactly how we want to do it. But yeah, it was a funny interaction.
Yeah. Did you get a little bit tedious? Like, I really want you to do it this way.
I was like, okay, you can try it that way, but good luck lining them up.
You know what, Ashley, thank you so much for taking time out to come on the show and share a beautiful story of looking through glasses and making sure that you see everybody for who they are. The ability to be whatever you want to be. Potential is endless with our youth. Potential is endless no matter what age you are. And you're a prime
Yeah.
example of that beast mindset, still educating, still empowering people. My hat's off to you and your husband. How can the viewers reach out to get your books to know more about what you're doing?
Yeah, you can check out our mamabearbooks.com website. We're also on the social media and everything. Links are all on our website, but yeah, check us out, mamabearbooks.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.